1 in 3 adults on this planet is living with high blood pressure right now, and according to the World Health Organization, close to half of them don't know it. But here's what most people get wrong about that statistic. Once you pass 60, it isn't 1 in 3 anymore. According to the American Heart Association, more than 70% of Americans over 65 have high blood pressure. That's not 1 in 3. That's 2 in 3. And here's the part that matters even more. Almost everything you've absorbed over your lifetime about what your numbers should be, including that famous 120/80, was built largely around the arteries of much younger adults. Arteries that behave in a fundamentally different way than yours behave today. So when you sit in an exam room at 68 and someone reads you 2 numbers and hands you a prescription, you're often left with the most important question completely unanswered. What do those 2 numbers actually mean for a person my age? That's what this video is for. Over the next 25 minutes, I'm going to show you what your top number and your bottom number are really telling you after 60, the specific target range that major research now supports for older adults, and the 10-minute daily routine that published research links to meaningful drops in the top number. I'm also going to show you a reading pattern that doesn't look alarming at first glance, a pattern where the top number is moderately high and the bottom number looks wonderful, that after 60 predicts heart attacks and strokes better than an obviously scary number does. Most people over 60 have never had that pattern explained to them, and many have been actively reassured about it. I'll show you exactly what it looks like on your own home monitor before this video is over. And I'll tell you about a woman named Ruth because one small decision she made at her kitchen table, a decision that felt completely reasonable at the time, is the same decision millions of people over 60 are making this week. Here is exactly what I'm going to walk you through today, in order. Number 1, what systolic and diastolic actually mean after 60, in plain language, and the target range that a landmark trial of more than 9,000 people, most of them older adults, pointed to when it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Number 2, the wide gap reading pattern I just mentioned, called isolated systolic hypertension, why it becomes the dominant form of high blood pressure after 60, and the specific gap number that should prompt a conversation with your doctor. Number 3, the 5 home measurement mistakes that can inflate your reading by 10 to 15 points, including one that involves nothing more than a full bladder. Number 4, the roughly 10-minute daily routine that a 2023 analysis in the British Journal of Sports Medicine associated with average systolic drops of around 8 points, which is in the range of what some single medications achieve for some people. And number 5, the one mistake that most often turns a manageable blood pressure number into an emergency room visit, and it involves the pill bottle that may be sitting in your medicine cabinet right now. Quickly, so you know who's talking to you. I'm a physician, and my work centers on cardiovascular health in adults over 60. Everything in this video is anchored to named, published research and guidelines, and I'll tell you the source as we go. One thing before we start, and I mean this sincerely, this video is education, not medical advice. Your history, your kidneys, your medications, your fall risk, all of that changes what's right for you. Please don't start, stop, or change anything based on a video, mine included, without talking to the doctor who actually knows you. Let me tell you about Ruth. Ruth is a composite of a pattern I have seen repeat over and over, with details changed, but every piece of her story comes from real, common experience. Ruth is 69 years old. She lives in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the house she and her husband bought in 1989. She walks her dog twice a day. She volunteers at her church's food pantry on Thursdays, and until 2 years ago, she took exactly 1 prescription medication. A thyroid pill she'd been on since her 50s. At her annual physical in June, Ruth's blood pressure read 152/88. Her doctor took it again at the end of the visit, 149/86. He told her she had hypertension, handed her a prescription for a low-dose blood pressure medication, and asked her to come back in 3 months. Ruth filled the prescription that afternoon. She took it every morning with her coffee for about 3 weeks. Then 2 things happened. First, she developed a dry, tickling cough that wouldn't quit, which is a known side effect of the class of medication she was given. Second, she felt exactly the same as she always had. No headaches, no dizziness, nothing. She stood in her kitchen one Tuesday morning holding the pill bottle, and she thought something perfectly logical. I feel fine. This pill is making me cough. My numbers were probably just high because I was nervous at the doctor's office. She put the bottle in the cabinet and never took another one. She didn't call her doctor to say so, because she didn't want a lecture. For 14 months, nothing happened. Ruth felt great, which to her was proof she'd made the right call. Then one morning in the following September, she was doing the crossword and found she couldn't come up with ordinary words. Not hard clues, ordinary words. Her right hand went numb and clumsy for about 20 minutes, long enough that she dropped her pen twice. Then it all faded. Her daughter, thankfully, insisted on the emergency room anyway. Ruth's blood pressure on arrival was 194 over 102. The diagnosis was a transient ischemic attack, a TIA, which many people call a mini-stroke. The scans also showed early narrowing in one of her carotid arteries, the vessels that feed the brain. Ruth left the hospital on 2 blood pressure medications instead of 1, plus a statin, plus a follow-up schedule that now shapes her calendar. She was, by every measure, lucky. According to the American Stroke Association, roughly 1 in 3 people who have a TIA and don't get treatment go on to have a full stroke, many within a year. Here's why I'm telling you Ruth's story. Not because it's unusual, because it's typical. The single decision Ruth made, stopping her medication because she felt fine, is the most common blood pressure decision in America, and it's driven by a completely understandable misunderstanding of what high blood pressure is. Ruth thought no symptoms meant no problem, so let's talk about what was actually happening inside her arteries during those 14 quiet months. Think about a town water system. Somewhere in that town there's a water tower and a pump station. The pump pushes water into the pipes in surges, and the system holds a certain amount of standing pressure between surges, so that when you open your tap, water is there instantly. Your circulatory system works on the same 2-number logic. The top number, systolic, is the pressure in your arteries at the moment your heart pumps. That's the surge. The bottom number, diastolic, is the pressure that remains in the system between beats while your heart refills. That's the standing pressure in the pipes. 152 over 88 means the surge hits 152, and the system rests at 88. Now here's the part that changes everything after 60. In a young circulatory system, the large arteries are elastic. When the heart fires a surge into them, they stretch and absorb part of it, then spring back between beats, which keeps the resting pressure steady. It's like a water system with flexible, forgiving piping. But arteries stiffen with age. It happens to essentially everyone to some degree, and it happens faster with decades of higher pressure, smoking, or diabetes. Stiff arteries are like old, rigid metal pipes. When the pump fires into rigid pipes, there's no give. The surge isn't absorbed, so it spikes higher. That drives the top number up, and because rigid pipes don't spring back between surges, the resting pressure can actually drift down. That drives the bottom number down. This is why high blood pressure after 60 so often looks different than it does at 40. The top number climbs while the bottom number holds steady or falls, and the gap between them widens. That gap has a name, pulse pressure, and here's the detail almost nobody explains to patients. After roughly age 60, research going back to the long-running Framingham heart study suggests that the top number and that gap predict cardiovascular risk better than the bottom number does. which means the friendly reassurance so many older adults receive, well, your bottom number is excellent, can be exactly backwards. A very low bottom number sitting under a high top number isn't necessarily a good sign. It can be the signature of stiff arteries. Hold on to that thought, because in a few minutes I'll show you what that pattern looks like in a real reading and what the threshold is. One more piece of the mechanism, and it's the piece that explains Ruth. Why did she feel nothing for 14 months? Because your arteries have no nerve endings that report pressure to your conscious mind. The damage from high blood pressure happens silently, in the smallest vessels first. The tiny arteries deep in the brain, the delicate filters of the kidneys, the vessels at the back of the eyes. Every surge at 150 plus is a little more wear on pipes that were engineered for 120. The system doesn't send you a warning. For a very large number of people, the first symptom of years of high blood pressure is the event itself, a stroke, a heart attack, or, if you're fortunate like Ruth, a TIA that serves as a final warning. Ruth's arteries weren't fine during those quiet 14 months. They were quietly failing to absorb about 100,000 surges a day. Ruth's pattern is one version of this story. Let me show you 3 more, because after 60 this condition wears several different disguises, and one of them might be yours. Frank is 66, a retired diesel mechanic in Erie, Pennsylvania. His brother had a heart attack last spring, so Frank bought a home blood pressure monitor, which was a genuinely smart move. His first week of readings terrified him. 155, 161, 158. He called his doctor's office, convinced he needed medication immediately. Here's what the visit found. Frank had been taking his readings in the late morning, right after his second cup of coffee, right after climbing the stairs from his workshop, with the cuff wrapped over a flannel shirt sleeve, sitting on a stool with no back support and his legs crossed, and, on at least a few occasions, with a full bladder because he wanted to get the reading done first. Measured properly in the office after 5 minutes of quiet rest, bare arm, back supported, feet flat, Frank came in at 134/82. Still worth watching, not an emergency. According to American Heart Association measurement guidance, each of those individual mistakes can add roughly 5 to 10 points, and they stack. A full bladder alone can add about 10 points to the top number. Talking during the reading can add another 10. Frank wasn't wrong to measure at home. He was measuring a version of himself that didn't exist at rest. Eleanor is 74, a retired school teacher in Sacramento. Her home readings run around 158/66, and for 2 years she genuinely believed she was doing well, because a well-meaning friend told her a bottom number in the 60s was, quote, the blood pressure of a teenager. You already know where this is going because you've heard the mechanism. Look at Eleanor's gap. 158 minus 66 is a pulse pressure of 92. That widening gap is the signature of stiff arteries we talked about, and Eleanor's pattern has a formal name: isolated systolic hypertension, a high top number with a normal or low bottom number. It is the most common form of high blood pressure in people over 65. Research associates a pulse pressure persistently above about 60 in older adults, with meaningfully higher cardiovascular risk. When Eleanor's new doctor finally explained this, she started treatment, and notably, her doctor started low and moved slowly, because in older adults, driving the bottom number too far down carries its own risks, including reduced blood flow to the heart itself. That balancing act is precisely why this has to be managed with your own physician, not a chart from the internet. And then there's Walter, because Walter is the case that surprises people. Walter is 63, lives in Boulder, Colorado, hikes 3 days a week, weighs what he weighed at 35, hasn't touched a cigarette in his life, and cooks mostly from scratch with barely any salt. Walter's readings run 146/88, and it makes him quietly furious. I do everything right, he told his doctor. So why do I have this? The honest answer is that lifestyle is a powerful lever, but it is not the only lever. Walter's father was on blood pressure medication by 60, so was his brother. According to the CDC, family history and age are major risk factors that no amount of clean eating erases, because they shape how fast the arteries themselves stiffen. Roughly 9 out of 10 Americans will develop high blood pressure at some point in their lives if they live long enough. For Walter, the win was reframing it. Needing medication at 63 despite an excellent lifestyle isn't a personal failure. It's plumbing and genetics. And his lifestyle almost certainly means he needs less medication later than he otherwise would have. Frank, Eleanor, Walter, and Ruth. 4 different disguises, 1 condition. So now let's get practical. Here is exactly what to do with all of this, in order. Starting this week. First, learn what target range actually applies to you, because this is where that landmark trial comes in. In 2015, the New England Journal of Medicine published the Systolic blood pressure intervention trial, which researchers call the SPRINT trial. It followed more than 9,300 people at elevated cardiovascular risk, average age around 68, including a large group over 75. Half were treated to a standard top number target of under 140. Half were treated intensively to a target under 120. The trial was stopped early because the results were so clear. The intensive group had roughly 25% fewer major cardiovascular events and about 27% lower risk of death during the study. SPRINT is a big part of why the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association now define high blood pressure as 130/80 and up, and why many doctors aim below 130 for older adults who can tolerate it. 2 honest caveats. Intensive treatment in SPRINT came with more side effects for some people, including dizziness and kidney effects, and the trial used careful, repeated, proper measurement. So your target is a conversation, especially if you have fall concerns or kidney disease. But the era of, 150 is fine at your age, is over. The research doesn't support it. Second, start tracking both numbers and the gap between them. This pays off what I promised Eleanor's story would teach you. When you log a reading, write down 3 things: the top number, the bottom number, and the top minus the bottom. If your top number is consistently above 130 and your gap is consistently above 60, that specific combination is worth showing your doctor, in writing, at your next visit. Don't announce it in vague terms. Hand over the log and say, "My pulse pressure has been running above 60 for 3 weeks," and ask what it means for you. That single sentence tells your doctor you're tracking the number that matters most at your age. Third, measure correctly, because as Frank learned, a sloppy reading is worse than no reading. Here is the protocol the American Heart Association recommends, and it takes about 8 minutes. Empty your bladder first. Sit quietly for 5 full minutes before the reading. No phone, no talking. No caffeine, exercise, or smoking in the 30 minutes prior. Sit in a chair with your back supported and both feet flat on the floor, legs uncrossed. Cuff on a bare arm, not over a sleeve, with the cuff at heart level, your arm resting on a table. Then take 2 readings, 1 minute apart, and record both. Do this in the morning and the evening for 7 days, and bring the average, not your single scariest number, to your doctor. 7 days of proper readings tells your doctor more than a year of waiting room measurements. And it protects you from being treated for a number that was really just a flannel shirt and a full bladder. Fourth, the 10-minute routine. In 2023, the British Journal of Sports Medicine published a large analysis of 270 exercise trials involving more than 15,000 participants, comparing every form of exercise for lowering blood pressure. The surprise winner wasn't running or cycling. It was isometric exercise, the kind where you hold a muscle contraction without moving, and it was associated with average top number reductions of roughly 8 points. That's in the neighborhood of what some single medications achieve for some people. The most studied protocol is simple. A wall sit, back flat against the wall, knees bent partway as if sitting in an invisible chair, held for 2 minutes, then 2 minutes of rest, repeated 4 times. About 15 minutes total, 3 times a week, and hand grip versions exist for people with knee trouble. 2 safety notes that really matter. Breathe steadily the entire time because holding your breath during a contraction spikes blood pressure sharply. And if you have heart disease or your pressure is poorly controlled, clear this with your doctor before you start. On the other days, 5 minutes of slow breathing, around 6 breaths per minute, has research support for modest reductions too. None of this replaces medication if you need it. It stacks with it. 5th, and this one is Ruth's item. Never stop a blood pressure medication abruptly and silently. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Stopping certain medications cold, particularly beta blockers, can cause a rebound surge in blood pressure and heart rate within days. And stopping any of them because you feel fine misunderstands the whole condition, because you felt fine at 152, and you would feel fine at 190. If a medication is giving you a side effect, like the dry cough Ruth developed, which is a well-known effect of ACE inhibitors, that is not a reason to quit. It's a reason to call. There are several distinct classes of blood pressure medication, and a cough from one class can often be solved by switching to another. That's a 5-minute phone call. Ruth's 14 silent months, her TIA, and her carotid finding. All trace back to skipping that phone call. Before we close, one more move, because almost nobody over 60 does this, and it catches a problem that standard readings miss entirely. It's called the sit-to-stand check. Once you're comfortable with your home monitor, take a normal seated reading. Then stand up, wait 1 minute, and take a second reading while standing. If your top number drops by 20 points or more when you stand, or the bottom drops by 10 or more, that pattern is called orthostatic hypotension, and it's common in older adults on blood pressure treatment. Why does it matter? Because it's a major, under-recognized cause of dizziness, fainting, and falls. And a fall after 60 can be as life-altering as the stroke we're working to prevent. If you find that drop consistently, it doesn't mean your treatment is wrong. It often means the dose or timing needs a small adjustment, and your doctor will want to know. 2 caveats. Do this check with a chair right behind you and ideally someone nearby the first time. And if you feel lightheaded, sit down immediately rather than finishing the reading. And if you already get dizzy when standing, don't test it yourself at all. Just report the symptom. This 1-minute check is the kind of thing that separates people who manage this condition from people who get managed by it. So let's put the whole picture back together. After 65, this isn't a 1 in 3 condition. Per the American Heart Association, it's more than 2 in 3, and it's silent, which means the people it hurts most are the ones waiting to feel something. You now know what almost none of them know. You know the top number and the gap are what matter most at your age. You know a target below 130 is what the SPRINT trial pointed toward for many older adults who can tolerate it. You know the 7-day measurement protocol that produces numbers worth trusting. The 15-minute wall sit routine associated with roughly 8-point drops. And the 1 phone call that Ruth didn't make. Here's your assignment, and it's genuinely small. This week, do one thing. Start the 7-day log, properly measured, mornings and evenings. That single sheet of paper will make your next doctor's visit more useful than the last 5 combined. If this video made those 2 numbers make sense for the first time, hitting the like button genuinely helps this reach the next person over 60 who's staring at a monitor wondering what 158 over 66 means. And subscribing means you'll see the next one, where I'm covering the supplements people over 60 take for blood pressure, including magnesium, which ones have real research behind them, and which popular ones don't. One last thing. If you have a spouse, a brother or sister, or a friend over 60 who takes blood pressure medication, or who was ever told their numbers were borderline and never heard another word about it, send them this video. Statistically, 2 out of 3 of the people you love in that age group are living with this right now, and most of them are managing it with less information than you have after the last 25 minutes. Take care of your heart, and I'll see you in the next one.